It was last month actually. It was 12. Happy belated. Thank you.
It's 58. Probably 25.
I know. That's so sweet. Yeah.
And you were here last month, so. Now that you saw it,
Yeah, it's 50 acres. It's land. It's valuable land.
You should share.
I had a cookie.
You had a cookie? You too? When was yours?
Saturday.
This Saturday coming up?
I can roll with things.
Ed, did you find out who that employee was?
Thank you.
Yes, happy birthday.
41.
No, it's at the board meeting. I said to
Look at my hair. It's happening. I have so many girls. I'm keeping it. I'm not having it.
Yeah, really?
It does, right? And it's just in the front. Well, it's so funny.
That's so close.
Test.
Yeah, and I'm gonna paste it on my forehead.
I do that with this lawyer we're applying to, and I always want to call Jason and his name's Jacob, and I'm like,
Oh my God, that's so funny. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello. Good
All
afternoon.
right. Clock. Welcome to the San Antonio Housing Authority Operations and Real Estate Committee meeting. Welcome back from the summer break. It's good to see everyone. I'm going to begin recording.
Recording in progress.
I'd like to remind that we are on a Zoom conference, which is a hybrid conference that we have going on as well. Anybody that is on the phone on the Zoom, you can use *6 to. You can also now. The meeting will be recording, as you know, and anybody that needs to mute and unmute. The live transcript is also turned on. Just one moment. My apologies. Here we go. Testing, testing. All right, the live transcript is also turned on, and you can manage it at the bottom of your screen. I will begin with roll call. Chairwoman Dr. Ana Cha Guzman. Vice Chair Olga Kaufman.
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert Casillas.
Present.
Commissioner Dalia Contreras.
Present.
Commissioner Lauren D. Dantzler. Commissioner Gabriel Lopez.
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio Perez.
Present.
And in for Doug Ponick is Valerie Carrillo.
Present.
CEO and President Ed Hinojosa Jr.
Present.
Vicky Cavazos is also present.
Present.
Commissioner Lopez, you may call the meeting to order.
Thank you. The Board of Commissioners or its committee may hold a closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071-076 for consultation concerning attorney-client matters, real estate, litigation, personnel, and security matters. The board or committee reserves the right to enter into closed meeting at any time during the course of the meeting. And I understand we have one person signed for public comment.
Oh, testing, testing. Okay, yes, sir, we do have one. It is Christine White. I do not see Christine White, sir.
Okay. We know that,
Is she online, Joanna?
Let me check here. Is Christine White on the Zoom? Christine White. No, I do not see her.
okay.
Mr. Lopez, I don't see her on here. I think we
Okay,
can
with her
proceed.
not being present, we'll continue to move forward. Let's go to item number 3, update discussion regarding Alizon by Master Planner, Able City.
Good afternoon. Mario Peña, principal at Able City, for the record. So we're here again a month later. We're excited to give you an update. There's really been a lot of moving forward going on, and Seema will go through the presentation, but just to sum it up for you here before we begin. It's been a month full of activities, gatherings with the community. We're now entering the stage where we're beginning to have some very exciting design discussions. There's a lot to do and consider. The community has given us quite a bit of things to ponder and weigh out. And so then the next steps, as you'll see in more detail, is to go back to the community with a series of options for them to then come in and give us some more detailed information. So Seema will give you some more detail on it. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, as Mario was mentioning, we're kind of sort of halfway in our process. It's a little bit more than halfway in the timeline because the earlier phases are a little bit longer. But you know, as you remember, hopefully we started with the listening and learning, which was a really kind of open-ended conversations with residents and community, where we were just trying to understand what the issues were, and then we moved into visioning and design. And, you know, so digging into some of the details about the specifics, and I'll get into some more detail. And then, you know, we're about to kind of move into the evaluation and feedback. So we're going to come back to the community with design ideas so that they can then again engage in conversation and provide feedback. So I thought that, you know, we've been talking about the community engagement process in bits and pieces throughout the last couple of months, but we kind of packaged it all together, and we can walk you through really the last 6 months of what we've heard and what we've been up to. So that first phase, the listening and learning, was between kind of February and April. We had all types of different activities. We had the kickoff meeting. We had the open house where we were at the Alizon Community Center for 2.5 weeks every day. We went door knocking. We knocked all 501 doors. We went to a variety of pop-up events like the Dia de los Niños and others, and then sort of started our committees. So in all of those interactions, we had a total of 196 interactions, and I can kind of just give you a brief overview of what those conversations were. They were all open-ended conversations, so we really just kind of followed along where the conversations took us. It wasn't a survey, so really kind of what people talked about kind of helped us understand what was important. So about 60% of the interactions were residents, 40% were non-residents. There was a lot of conversation about preservation, as you might have imagined. You can see here there's a little bit of a difference between residents and non-residents in terms of what that conversation entailed. So 50% of residents spoke. It was kind of a 50-50 split between residents who spoke positively about demolition or negatively about demolition, where there was about 21% of non-residents who spoke positively about demolition versus 79% who spoke negatively. So you can see the residents were more kind of split, and the non-residents, the community members, were more often, talking about preservation in a positive way. And then a lot of the other conversations that came up, were about safety, maintenance, open space, parking, the kind of more day-to-day things, maintenance, safety. There was a lot of residents who spoke about those things, and things like open space was more mixed. So this is kind of an overview of the different topics and ideas that came up through that process. So then in May, we started kind of a more formal process where we started meeting in groups during the visioning and the design phase. So we had a number of different meetings. The pink is kind of the resident committee. So there was, we invited residents to participate in the committee, and we met pretty regularly throughout May and June, where we kind of introduced different topics. And then the orange dates are the community committee, which was similar topics, just creating two different spaces. And then we wrapped up the phase with the community design workshop at the end of June. So I'll quickly go through those meetings. We started with the resident kickoff, and this was really just giving an opportunity to walk through the process so people could understand what to expect. We probably spent half of this time just answering questions. So it was, kind of a fluid conversation, but just really, what's a master plan? What's the goal here? Just getting people so they feel like they know how to engage. The second sort of pair of meetings with the residents in the community was around history and storytelling. So we had some guest speakers, Dr. Christine Drennan, who's done a lot of research in the area, and Leticia Vela, who was born at Alizon Courts and has done a lot of kind of community work over the years. So that was a really great set of conversations. The following set of meetings, we talked about different public housing case studies. So we really kind of dug into, at a very high level, like how do you finance affordable housing, and how are those financing mechanisms going to affect what we can and cannot do at Alizon Courts. And then we looked at 4 different case studies from around the country of similar projects, so that people could understand, what the challenges are and what the opportunities are, and so that, when we get further along in the conversation, people, if we say, well, we can't do that because X funding source says that's not allowed, they know what that means, and that they've heard those terms before. So really just trying to bring people along in, what the opportunities are. And then the final set of meetings that we held with these committees was really digging into the specifics of the site. So we talked about things like the floodplain, and then, other things that, around bringing the buildings up to modern building standards. So, regardless of whether we preserve and rehabilitate a building, or if we build something new, no matter what, we're going to address the issues around the HVAC and insulation and the unit size and things like that. So it's not a choice between getting a new air conditioner or being able to put a dryer in your unit, or we have to demo and build something new. That there's a baseline standard that no matter what we do, this is an opportunity to really upgrade the buildings. So this is, this slide is updated from what's in your physical handbook or copy. So if you could just look at the screen, because there was a little bit of an error originally. So this gives you a sense of, we did an activity with the residents where we asked them to prioritize their goals. So the kind of line in blue are the main priorities across the project. for, that we just have established, here in this room and throughout the process, that we're going to maintain the affordability, we're going to meet modern building standards, and we're going to improve accessibility. The residents prioritized, they were each given, you can see in the pictures, an opportunity to kind of paste little cards in the order that they wanted, depending on their priorities. So they prioritized, a lot of things around the streetscape and the open space, and then also building more public housing units was important. And then one other interesting thing here is that more people prioritized, the goal that said preserve the look and feel of the neighborhood than preserve as many buildings as possible. So we kind of tried to tease out sort of different people's attitudes. Not to say that any of these are not goals, but we were trying to get them to start to make some decisions and weigh one way or the other. When we had the same conversation with the community committee, there was kind of more of a focus on the preservation, and it was a sort of different, kind of more open-ended conversation. And then the last meeting was the large community workshop we held on June 25th. We held it at Tafoya, which is right across the street from Alizon Courts. Here again, we sort of went through the whole process in case people, this was their first time showing up. We did another sort of kind of prioritization matrix and asked people to write their kind of mission statement for the project. So all of those things we've been gathering, and they're helping us guide the design process. And then we did a kind of interactive activity with the group. So every group got a whole bunch of Legos, and we asked them, if we have the existing site, there are going to have to be modifications, and we explained what those things were. For example, the floodplain has changed. There are going to be some buildings that are going to need to be vacated because they're not going to be able to be improved within the floodplain. And then the other big constraint was the units are going to have to increase in size, because in 1939, the standards for unit sizes were much smaller than today. So we needed to solve for this problem of how do we add that square footage back into Alizon Courts, and then we also gave them the opportunity of developing at the baseball field. So there's actually quite a lot of similarity between the different groups. There was a lot of focus on, if we're going to change anything, let's change within the courtyards, so that the streetscapes could stay as similar as possible. Some groups kind of developed Brazos a little bit more with new buildings. Some sort of took the opportunity to build some park space along the creek. So we really got into kind of lots of different ideas and really asked the community, hey, can you help us solve this problem? We want to preserve as much as we can, but we also need to meet the needs of the residents of the future. We need bigger units. We need to upgrade them. How do we make that happen? And so we worked together to think through those challenges. I'll just skip through this because I kind of talked through that one. And so then we kind of took a pause with our engagement over the last month of July. And so now we're taking all of those ideas and we're going to develop some design options that we'll then present back to the community. And we have a number of meetings, some committee meetings, a bigger public meeting, and then a survey that we're going to work with some SAHA volunteers to help administer door to door, so that folks can see some real options and then give them their feedback. And then hopefully we'll take that feedback and come together with the final direction. So I think that's about it. So really kind of that design, where we're headed with those design options is always sort of going back to this diagram of like, how do we bring all of the pieces? A lot of these things are, sometimes conflicting and we need to prioritize. But how do we address resident needs, the history and culture of the site, or of the Alizon Courts, the site constraints, the funding sources, sustainability, and then all of the regulations that come with building housing. How do we incorporate all of those things in a way where we have the most successful design? And then before I pass it off to Mario for one last update, we have launched the Reimagine Alizon website. So all of the graphics that are in this presentation are also on the website. And you can walk through all of the meetings and see pictures and the slide decks we had presented and the data that we've gathered. So it's kind of available for anybody to see. They can sort of go back and see, what all the conversations were, and we'll continue to update this website as we develop the designs and gather more feedback.
Oh, yeah, and this is great because everything we've been doing is completely transparent and available to anyone in the public. So I think the website looks great. So just one quick note, because we do want to just give you an update on something that is in all San Antonio's eye, which is the bond for housing, the bond monies that are going to be available soon. And so in thinking about that, we are obviously in front of it, being proactive. And so what we are beginning to think about is the hint from the community, or the acknowledgement from the community that the problem is probably best solved if we want to do some sort of preservation by using at least the baseball field as a place to build. And so we are now working with our designers at Able City and at Alamo Architects to begin to consider how we can maybe be an option for us to consider in our application for that bond money that's coming. We've sort of then we've made sure that as we fast track that to the city application process, that the community engagement is then in line with that, so that everything that we're turning in has been sort of vetted and discussed with the community, with the committees and the community at large.
Question.
So questions now, yeah.
I understand that, I think it's a great idea taking the baseball field to do phase one without displacing anybody. And then once that's done, they move from one area and then you tear that down and build. But are y'all looking at the end replacing that baseball field or a place where kids can play?
So the feedback we've gotten for now, and again, all of these design considerations, all of the options that we have are going to be presented back to the community to make sure we're responding to what they need. What we hear right now preliminarily is that a baseball field itself we may not need to replace the field, but we do need to have more playgrounds dispersed throughout the communities the areas that we build. So even then, we're solving for that, but not in the same format. We're picking up that the format that's present there today in terms of recreation isn't the format that's most useful or needed.
And I've noticed out of 501 doors that you mentioned, you basically reached 98 or 196 doors. Have you spoken to these other people in one way or another through a survey or anything? Have they been able to be vocal about what they think also?
So we gave each and every door a flyer of information so that everyone knows at least what the process is about and how they can reach us. We are developing a survey based on what we've heard initially, so that when we come in and make some of the design decisions we're going to recommend, we've got that survey in hand that's reaching more people than those that have been able to attend the meetings. That survey is coming up as well.
Are those surveys in English and Spanish?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll just add to, not everyone's going to want to talk to us. We definitely knocked on someone's door. They said they weren't interested. You saw their air conditioner was on, but they didn't answer the door. So, it's pretty clear they were home. But, I don't answer the door a lot of times when, a political solicitor comes to my house. So we tried our best to, go at the right times when people were home, and, tried to be accessible. But at the end of the day, it needs to be kind of that two-way interaction. And hopefully when they see us one time walking around the neighborhood, the next time when they see us, they'll be that much more inclined to want to talk to us, and we've left flyers with information. They have access to a telephone number, they can text or call, an email address, but we do need that kind of two-way response.
So basically, 196 people will be making the decisions for 1,000-plus people then? Which is fine. I mean, it's going to happen, but...
Sure. I think that the community engagement process is designed to take input. So we're not really couching this as putting it out for a vote for a certain demographic or select number of people to decide. We're letting everyone who's interacting contribute to the final product. So it's not, we don't like to think of it as a decision where we're deciding between A and B. It's feedback for multiple features that can be added to the final design. So it's all a contribution by everybody, including the designers and experts on the team that are looking at this from other perspectives that are more technical.
And how are the community advocates responding to all of this, especially like the Esperanza?
I feel uncomfortable speaking for them. I hope we're doing I hope they can see that we're doing as much as we possibly can. I think and I think they can see that they know our doors are open. We are now in dialogue with them. I think that's as much as we can ask, is that they know that we're listening, and we've told them that, and we'll continue to show that.
But the dialogue has been good?
The dialogue has been great. I mean, I'm not saying everything has been positive, but I'm saying
They're engaging.
there's the discussion is there, and the design options that we're developing are based on the input we're getting, and then they will be further refined based on further input we're going to get.
So we're also adjusting based on input from the community advocates. There's one advocate in particular that is associated with Esperanza Peace and Justice Center that expressed concerns about the floodplain and losing buildings there. So I know Able City has now contracted or is in the process of contracting with a civil engineer to study that very much in detail to understand what we can and cannot do as far as the floodplain. And so based on the input we're getting, we're also reacting to that.
I really appreciate that everything's online. Is that website in Spanish as well, or is there a Spanish version of it?
Yeah, we're in the process of translating it now.
Yeah,
Okay.
I checked, that's one of my questions. I went to look at it real quick. If they've got the option to switch it to Spanish, it'd be good.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
I think for the future, I mean, I think to your point, Commissioner Casillas, about numbers, you're absolutely right. You'll go to doors and some of them won't answer, and there's a lot of reasons why, potentially, right? Trust, maybe, and safety, concern, a lot of reasons why people don't open their door. And so I wonder if there's a way to think about the next phase, which is, it's getting more and more important for community feedback. It would be really nice to have more up front because it's going to inform the designs, but especially as we get closer to decisions. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to leverage trusted community partners to engage and compensate them for their time and make sure that they have an opportunity to be like an additional set of hands and feet to try to bring people to the table or create smaller spaces that maybe people feel more comfortable being because they were invited by someone who they normally engage with or something like that. There may be a way to create some more intimate spaces and leverage trusted partners to have more people at the table if that's something that's a goal.
Sure, and I think some of the success we've had is because we've had referrals from people that have shown up to meetings and then brought somebody else. But yeah, definitely we can consider adding a variety of different meeting types and places for more people to show up, and so we can maybe at the next meeting we'll come back with some options for that.
One final point to add, Mario mentioned that they're starting to look at the baseball field and working with an architect on that. We'll also be looking at vacant land that's near Alizon, adjacent to Alizon, and things of that sort, to see if it's available where we could also expand the footprint.
Yeah, there's some areas look somewhat promising. So by next month, we should have more detail on that for you all.
Awesome. And I also appreciate that all of the, you all are kind of playing back for us what the community has shared and elevating what their priorities are and whatnot. And so I appreciate that that's online for them to see as well, kind of to have a chance to either co-sign or say, hey, that's actually not what we said. Because a lot of times that part is missing, information is synthesized and then the synthesis isn't shared with the community. So I appreciate that you all are doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just a point of interest. I noticed based on y'all's information, that 50% of the community members seem to be in favor of demolition, which has typically not been the information that we'd received in the past. We don't want, we want to preserve look and feel is definite, but they were more, it appeared to have come across, at least to me, that they wanted to see more preservation of the buildings themselves. So it's nice to see, maybe there's some understanding that y'all are accomplishing, that we're okay with buildings getting demolished, as long as the look and, you're able to look and preserve the look and feel of what was there. Not saying demo everything, but that's it. That hadn't been the comments before. It's like, don't touch the buildings, just make them better. Well, can't do that. The cost is difficult to do that.
Yeah, the residents definitely had mixed, some residents, they've lived there for a year, they don't really know the history. They're like, we'd love a new building. These buildings are old, they have lots of issues. So we heard that. And definitely the preservation issue was less of a priority relative to all of the other things that families have to deal with and that are issues in their housing.
Right, because the non-residents, that was close to 80%.
Yeah.
That, no, preserve the buildings.
Yeah.
Well, the residents actually are okay with the demolition, provided what they're getting in return type thing. So it was just a point that I found interesting. Is there any other questions?
I guess the thing I'd say is they spoke favorably of having new buildings, but I think it's important to note that doesn't mean that they want demolition. They just want the features of a new building. That's sort of what we picked up on, right? But they are just not as tied to the history. And so part of the process that we were going through is we wanted to make sure that everyone knew, right, the importance of the history of the site, and then they can start making some giving us feedback, and then understanding that no matter, like Seema said at the beginning of the presentation, no matter what we do, we have a baseline of improvement.
Sure.
Standards, no matter what.
No, and I agree, and I appreciate what y'all have done. I with regards to your comment, it was, they spoke, 50% of the residents spoke positively towards demolition and replacing existing. So again, that was just different for me. That's why I said it's just a point of interest. So, Commissioner Pettis, did you have any comments?
No.
Are we good? Thank you, guys.
98 residents. 98 residents.
Okay, looks like we're moving to item number 4, consideration and appropriate action regarding Resolution 6264, authorizing the ratification of emergency procurement for the structural and waterproofing repairs at Via Trancaise Apartments. George Ayala, yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez. Good afternoon, members of the committee. This is a request to ratify a contract in response to an emergency contract we executed with a general contractor for structural and waterproofing repairs at the Via Trancaise Apartments. The Via Trancaise Apartments is a senior disabled high-rise in our public housing portfolio located just outside of San Antonio, built in 1967. So this is about a 55-year-old structure, 11 stories. It's a mix of masonry and brick. And so this came to our attention when it was found that pieces of concrete had been spalling off of the balcony enclosures. If you can see that picture, those are concrete balcony enclosures, And so what we think happened is over the years, concrete and brick, it's a porous material which absorbs water. And so in cold weather season, when these materials absorb water, they tend to expand. And over the decades, some of the concrete had become compromised. So this contract is sort of a belt and suspenders approach towards addressing this problem and preventing it in the future. So the large scope of items on this contract is to chip down the concrete. So all the concrete balconies will be x-rayed to determine where the steel is. The weakened, compromised concrete will be chipped down to the steel. It'll be exposed. The surface will be prepared appropriately. It'll be repacked with a structural concrete mix, and most importantly, it'll be recoated. And so anywhere, you can kind of see on top of the balconies, they have tube railing. That tube railing is embedded in that concrete structure. So anywhere you have a penetration into concrete, it introduces water. And so those will be cleaned, prepared, and waterproofed properly, and then coated. So the building will have a fresh coating. It'll be power washed down to its original surface, so it'll look cleaner at the end of this project. It'll be recoated, so it'll have fresh coats of paint. And this also takes care of issues such as the balcony netting, which prevents items from falling off a balcony or birds coming onto balconies. Another important scope of work in this contract is there's a lot of window units at Via Trancaise. And like any air conditioning system, it creates condensate. So this contract will provide for capturing of that water condensate and disposing of it properly. It'll shed it down to drains meant to capture stormwater. And so that'll alleviate an area where water is exposed right onto the concrete surfaces as well. It'll also provide slip resistance, so there's less chance of people slipping and falling. Improved lighting also was included in this, and some bird spikes to keep the pigeons off the building. I will turn this over to George Ayala to discuss the procurement aspect, unless there's any questions I can answer.
I'm just wondering, thinking of concrete and all the issues that you mentioned with the porous and whatnot, did we explore other materials that could be maybe more long-lasting or kind of avoid some of those similar issues in the future?
Yes, so the important part of this is we're using, again, the structural concrete that's much more resilient, but the important part of that is that it's going to be coated properly. So it'll have that coating that'll add a lot of long life to that concrete. It'll protect it from the water.
And then this is another assumption too. I'm assuming that we looked at the potential cost of window units, where it's a Band-Aid solution to do something to capture the condensation versus, going to a more modernized air cooling system.
I think you said the key word there, a modernized system. So I think if we ever modernize Via Trancaise, would be an opportunity to provide sort of a central air conditioning to the building, very similar to what we did at Victoria Plaza. So that building was around for 60 years, and they had mostly window units. When we turn that building over, it's going to have centralized air conditioning in every apartment. And so I think that's something that makes more sense as you're going to modernize a building, because it's very invasive. It's very expensive as well.
In Victoria, we had to move all the residents out to be able
Yes, sir.
to do that, so it's, there's also that impact. I think, Hector, you're also doing the fire sprinkler system work at this building, and that's, if I remember right, another $3.5 million.
Yes, so we're investing up to $4 million for fire protection retrofit into this building. This will be the last high-rise that we install, that we retrofit a fire protection system and bring us into full compliance with the city ordinance of providing fire protection. So there's sprinkler systems in the common areas of the building, and there's standpipes where, for the history of this building, whenever there was a fire, the fire department would connect to a standpipe that would go up the building to the appropriate floor, and they'd connect their hoses there. This project will provide actual sprinkler heads in every apartment. So if there's a fire, it'll be extinguished immediately.
When will that be complete?
We're preparing now. So we brought an item to the board a couple of months ago for some additional funding. And so we've gotten that wrapped up. We're signing the agreements with the contractor to add that into their scope.
Okay.
We've been having preliminary meetings with them. We'll now be meeting with public housing to inform the community there when we'll be starting, because it's a very invasive project,
Right.
and we'll need their cooperation.
There are no structural issues with the balconies that would cause a danger to the residents at this moment?
No, sir.
Okay.
When this project starts, the contractor will be providing scaffolding, and they'll be providing
protection.
some overhead protection so that nobody gets hurt. Everyone stay protected.
Structural concrete, per y'all's deal, they've done work with us before. Did we get any other bids, or was just, we
went
straight
to
award?
them specifically because they did a project at the Blanco Apartments, which is a senior disabled mid-rise. And what we had going on at that community was underneath the basement in the crawl space, the structural concrete columns were spalling out significant amounts of concrete. And the repairs that this company did there, SCS, were extraordinary. I'd never seen anything like it. It was very impressive. We've revisited that community here now probably 5 years later, and it's standing up to the work. They know how to repair, and most importantly, how to protect it for the life of that material.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Mr. Martinez mentioned, this procurement is actually exempt from competitive procurement because it's considered a life-threatening procurement. So like Mr. Martinez mentioned, we did consider the past performance of this vendor. They have performed at Blanco and Parkview with similar projects, and it was evaluated by Mr. Martinez as well, their performance.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion if there's no other questions.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve Resolution 6264. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, resolution passes. All right, number 5, consideration and appropriate action regarding Resolution 6265, authorizing the award of contracts for shingle roof repair and limited replacement to Geofill Material Technologies. Understand, Mr. Yellow.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. On May 5th of this year, Saga issued an invitation for bids for shingle roof repair and limited replacement that closed on May 25th of this year as well. The IFB was published on Saga e-procurement website, the Heartbeat Narrow e-procurement website, and directly solicited to 275 vendors. After the completion of this invitation for bids, we received a total of 6 respondents. These were evaluated on purchase price, the reputation of the bidder and his goods or services, the quality of the goods and services, the extent to which the goods and services meet Saga's needs, the total long-term cost, and other relevant factors that were listed in the solicitation. Based on the above-mentioned criteria, we recommend that the contract be awarded to the 3 lowest qualified bidders, which are Geofill Material Technologies, BR General Contractors, and Melkin Construction. This is for an annual cumulative amount not to exceed $2 million for a period of 1 year, with the option to renew for 4 additional 1-year terms.
Do we have any questions?
I'm on page 37 of 61, looking at the chart and at the total cost. Maybe there's a different total cost line. But it looked like the 3 lowest bidders were BR General, First Stop, and Geofill.
Yes, ma'am. So we do have a BR General and Geofill, which came out. So the bid is actually based on a line item pricing. So BR General and Geofill did come out as the top 2 lowest, but we are additionally recommending Milcon to go ahead and have that third vendor in case we do have, we tend to have vendors that tend to cancel their contracts mid the term of this particular bid. So that's why we're recommending or have an additional one. So some of the projects that we pursue in the future are small projects. However, any large project that is that comes across our desk, we will go ahead and bid it within those 3 awarded vendors. So we always going to go ahead and get that competitive that extra step and make sure that we're getting the best price within those 3 awarded vendors.
No other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve Resolution 6265.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, resolution 6226, lost the number, hold a second. 6265 passes. All right, item 6, consideration and appropriate action regarding resolution 6267, ratifying the expenditure of additional funds for sliding repair and replacement at the Valencia Apartments to be our general contractors. Mr. Ayala.
So good afternoon again. So originally, on December 8, 2021, Saja issued an invitation for bids for siding repairs and replacement at Villa de Valencia Apartments. This particular bid closed on January 6th of this year. And then we went ahead and issued, on March 14 of this year, we went ahead and issued a contract to be our general contractors for an amount not to exceed of $250,000, which was under the President and CEO's expanded authority. This amount included a base bid of $499,000 and a contingency amount of $4,501. Due to the unforeseen nature of this project, we did have some repairs that we didn't anticipate. So we're asking to amend this contract, to ratify this contract for an additional $15,727, which is, according to our policy, we would have to bring it to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, are there any questions with regards to this resolution?
I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
We have a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All righty, resolution 6267 passes. Number 7, consideration and appropriate action regarding resolution 6266, approving the 2022 small area fair market rent payment standard schedule, SFMR, at 106% to 118% for the housing choice voucher. Ms. Rodriguez.
So I just wanted to mention, you might recall, the board might recall that we brought a payment standard change to the board a few months ago. We're continuing in San Antonio to experience increasing rents that are occurring in the area, and I think that's happening in many, if not all, cities across the nation post-pandemic. And as we were in discussions with HUD, we decided to increase the payment standards even further to 110%. This is based on the fact that we know HUD will be increasing its payment standards later this year. Plus, we have excess reserves that we've built from residents not being able to find landlords to lease from. We currently have about 1,400 families that are searching for homes and having trouble finding homes. So we're hoping that this will help alleviate some of the rent burden that people are seeing when they go searching for homes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So as a part of this, just to give you a little background, we did go over this before, but just to reiterate, the San Antonio Housing Authority is a small area FMR designated housing authority. So instead of having one payment standard that goes across the city, we have groupings based on zip codes, since some zip codes have higher rents than others. And so we use what we call the payment standard, which is the maximum subsidy that's allowed for an assisted unit on the program. That's not necessarily the rent that the person may pay towards that for their rents, because it's a calculation, but it's a factor as a part of that calculation towards their rent. So Previously, we came to you with 110% for the, or 100% for the median, and that was a range of 90 to 110% for those fair market rents. With this one, we're now saying 110%, which is another median that changes, so it's like 108 to 118% that we're looking at to bring those payment standards up. Now, if you look at the payment standards, you'll see that previously, the one we came over for July, effective July, was 640 for like group 1 for a 0-bedroom, and it went up to or it was 608, it went to 640. Right now, we're looking at increasing that from 640 to like 704, and you'll see that the range is another increase of between like 40 to $250 or $300 for depending on those groupings. And this is to help those residents be able to find those rent units to meet those rents that with this growing market that we do have. Now, the estimated increase is an 8.8 increase for our budget towards the payment standards, but again, this would be spread out across as people are moving on the program. So not necessarily affecting all households. Those that are staying in place, we always update our payment standards in order to review when they're doing their either rent increases or their annual recertifications, but this will be more impactful for those that are moving to be able to find units. Because of the urgency on this, we are asking for an August 1, so it would go to the next board meeting, but we're asking to retroactive it to August 1 so that it would be more beneficial to our households. And the reason we're setting it to like the beginning of the month, it's easier processing and less errors for staff.
How will residents feel this? Will there be an impact to their, I'm just like thinking, is it going to change, like increase what they end up having to pay as well?
So no, actually increasing our payment standard if, because there's based on a calculation. So there's a tenant payment that's calculated, and sometimes as a person's in a unit, the rent may go up, and as we increase our payment standards, it could decrease the tenant's portion. For this one, it's more for movers. So the way that they would see this is they've been issued a voucher, and let's say their shopping estimate for one zip code is $740. With this increase, they might now be able to shop for a unit that's $850 instead. So then going to an apartment, if they say, oh, well, our rents are $800 and their previous amount didn't cover it, this new amount would allow them to be able to lease.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Well, I also wanted to mention one of the phenomena that's happening in San Antonio and other cities across the nation, and we've been talking with HUD about this, and they've confirmed it's an issue in other cities. Corporate buyers are coming in and purchasing single-family homes. There was a report recently that 50% of the home sales in San Antonio are now by corporate buyers, which essentially are hedge funds and investment funds on Wall Street. And then we also know that some properties, multifamily properties, have been purchased by corporate buyers, and we're trying to deal with one right now that has 60 or 70 Section 8 voucher holders, and they don't want them any longer. The corporate buyer came in, and they're trying to get the Section 8 voucher holders out because they believe they can make more money at market rates.
Can they do that legally?
The way they're doing it is not basically doing it by forcing them out. They're just not doing any maintenance or responding to maintenance issues, and that's causing pretty severe, in some cases, maintenance problems in the units. So that's the way they're trying to get everybody out. Then they'll go in and redo the apartments. So in that case, a resident, and we've told the residents, they can request an emergency inspection, and if the unit fails inspection, we would then give them another voucher. So on this issue, we've been working with the District 7 Councilwoman's office, the Chief of Staff, because the Councilwoman's been out on maternity leave, but also with a resident advocate group called TOP, Texas Organizing Project, and the City of San Antonio to help deal with this problem. I don't know, do you want to add something to that, Stephanie?
So some of the other ways that they can do it is that they don't renew leases. So a landlord does not necessarily have to renew a lease. And so those that are at the end of their leases, they're also saying, we're not renewing it, so you do have to vacate the property by this date. Not necessarily that it's the maintenance side on those units.
So not necessarily a violation, but
Right.
then
Is there a
they can do it
protection for voucher holders against landlords doing that?
So in the HAP contract, what we say, because it's a private landlord, the HAP contract is only good for certain time periods, and then they have to renew, and they would do paperwork with us to show that they're renewing, or we would continue to do their annual recertification. So they can do a non-renewal, and we would issue a voucher to move. On the maintenance side, as a part of our HAP contract, it does state that there's an obligation for the landlord to maintain their properties for housing quality standards, and if they do not, then we have to terminate the HAP contract and allow the family out of a lease early without penalty because they have not completed their obligation under the HAP contract.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but, and again, this is just another mechanism for the developer or the apartment building owner to move that voucher out of their system, out of their
Yeah.
program.
Correct. And there's nothing to say that a landlord that they have to take a voucher, although the city is working towards, like anybody who gets new funds through their redevelopment, that they're saying you have to take the vouchers, but those that are not going through that redevelopment are not required to accept housing vouchers.
And because these are voucher programs, nobody received benefit from a bond or any of that. None of that was a part of this. So they're private people. It's unfortunate, but yeah.
Is that something TOP is
Agreed.
working on? Like any type of legislation or some sort of policy to protect? I mean, it seems predatory, right? Like, but
Yeah.
legal predatory behavior? And just seems like there should be something.
I'll start and then you can add,
Okay.
Stephanie. So some cities have really city code or city laws that landlords must accept Section 8 vouchers. That's what we've seen. In talking with HUD and other housing authorities, we know this is happening across the nation. It's not just happening here in San Antonio. So it's on HUD's radar, and it's one of the reasons that housing authorities are having trouble leasing up right now, because corporate landlords are coming in, raising the rents, getting the Section 8 voucher holders out, and reducing the affordable housing supply
Population.
or the supply available to Section 8 residents. And so we'll continue the discussions with HUD, and also I'm sure there would be advocates on city council for putting some sort of
Ordinance or-
rule in place that landlords have to accept vouchers.
So there are some advocate groups that are looking at that. We do talk with HUD, and it is across the nation, as he said. And so that is something that we're continually talking with them about. Other cities and states have made like different changes in their laws for that, but nothing has yet passed here in San Antonio.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 6266.
Motion to approve Resolution 6266.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 6266 passes. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you.
Do we have any resident concerns?
Don't have any. I don't know if the board has anything that they'd like to raise. Actually, I do know that the board has something
Okay.
to raise.
What, as far as the voucher program, do we have like an annual amount or number of vouchers available, or how does that?
Yes, we'll go through that as part of our contractual agreement in closed session. Brandy's going to be doing a presentation about that.
I just have a few concerns of issues that have been brought to my attention by residents. There are some community rooms that are being closed early, or, I mean, with the heat that's going on right now, and some of these buildings, you know, with window units, these window units are really not cooling the apartments, and the community rooms are great places for these people to get away from the heat. They're shutting them down at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's 105 degrees still at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's still 98 degrees at 9, 10 o'clock at night. I just think we need to figure out a way or whatever that these rooms can stay open a little bit later until the weather changes, and I don't think that's going to happen until probably November. So, you know, that's a concern that's been brought to me, and I know that where I used to live, you know, these small window units, they cool, but with this extra heat, and then they're breaking down, and they're not able to find replacements because of shortages, and, they're relying on one unit to cool the entire apartment, so.
Yes, we'll look into that. I think that's a good suggestion, Commissioner. As you know, we're trying to balance. The flip side is that some people say not locking the rooms encourages homeless people to come to that location and spend time there. So I know the property you're at now does not have it doesn't have an enclosure. It's a completely open community
But that's
room.
not the one I'm talking about, you know where I'm talking about.
Right, and so
I'm talking about Parkview right now, that I know that's where I've had residents call me and be concerned because they're like, it's hot and they don't have a place and they throw them out at 5 o'clock. There is a remedy. They can lock the door when they leave at 5 o'clock, and a responsible person just has to close the door, and it's locked.
We'll certainly look into that on a property-by-property basis.
And it may be happening in other properties, and we need to see, because, this weather is really, really hot, and they, our seniors and our families or whatever need places to be able to go. And, we're told that these community rooms are cooling centers, so then we need to make them available.
Yes, and we'll certainly look into that on a property-by-property basis. The other thing, we're also providing our residents with information about the cooling centers that are open at the, various city locations. So they do have that as well.
Right. And they're also putting out word that the community rooms are cooling centers also. So, but if they're not open, they're not cooling centers. Another issue I have is the community bathrooms that are supposed to be down in the lobbies and stuff of the different communities. A lot of them are lost, and we've had this conversation at lunch before, to where they're locked for the employees only. These are the residents' bathrooms. Yes, the employees can use them, but I understand that they say that, all homeless people come and use them and stuff. Where I live now, they keep them locked 24/7, the ones that are down by the community room. And I asked Monday at a residents meeting that was held by the manager, why are our restrooms locked? Because of COVID. That's not an excuse to have a restroom locked. That doesn't mean we're going to lock all the other restrooms because of COVID. I was on the elevator once, and there was a gentleman, and I could tell he had to go to the bathroom and didn't make it to his floor and urinated in his pants in the elevator. And if he could have used the restroom in the lobby on the first floor, that wouldn't have happened, and that shouldn't be happening. So we need to look into that also.
All right, thank you for that. Yes, we'll look into that.
And also, they reported that reasonable accommodations are behind. I have a question, not that they're behind, but once you're approved for a reasonable accommodation and they all happen here at the corporate office, doesn't that reasonable accommodation follow you if you move?
Brandy, do you want to discuss that?
No, it does not. We actually have to recertify the need because situations do change. So that's oftentimes, these are maybe 2 to 3, sometimes 10 years old, and so we do need to have those recertified.
Okay. That's all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you. Is there there are no other residents' concerns? We can move to closed session. Valerie, you want to read
Yes,
this
certainly. At this time, the board will go into closed session for real estate consultation with attorney to deliberate the management, purchase, exchange, lease, or value of certain real properties and obtain legal advice regarding related legal issues pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072 and Texas Government Code Section 551.071, including consultation with attorney regarding HUD, SAHA, MTW contract, and for personnel consultation with attorney to deliberate the appointment, employment evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee and obtain legal advice regarding legal issues pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074 and Texas Government Code 551.071, including consultation with attorney regarding former employees' complaints. The time now is, what time is it? It's 2:03 PM.
Okay, we'll go into closed session. Just in here. Okay.
Recording stopped.
Right, we'll move to the board.
I'll talk to you afterwards.
Okay, okay. Welcome back.
Thank you. I think we've got everybody.
I'm going to start the recording.
Please.
Recording in progress.
Jose, we begin the streaming again? We ready? Sarah, we ready with the Zoom? Okay.
We're back in
Commissioner
session.
Lopez?
Thank you. There was nothing, Valerie, correct, we don't have to, nothing coming out of closed session.
Yeah,
We
there's
don't
no
have to say-
action coming out of closed session.
Okay.
So just move on to report and resource, if any, and then you
I
can
was going
adjourn.
to say, unless there's any objection, do any commissioners want to hear specific with procurement? Schedule units, we'll wait till next time with Tim being out. I will hear a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Raise your hand. Any opposed? Same sign. Commission, or rather, meeting adjourned.
Yay.
Thank you, everybody.
Great, thank you. I'll stop recording.
Recording stopped.
Jose, you good?